In today's society, a lot of people see or hear the word masculinity and immediately think of over-aggressive men trying to take power over women, other men, the government, and just society as a whole. I'm Connor, and I'm here to talk about what the word masculinity means. I think it's one of the most important things a man can have in his arsenal to become a successful man, a charitable man, and a determined man that has success in life. I want to talk about the difference between toxic masculinity and healthy masculinity. I'll talk about one of the main reasons I think masculinity is so important. And I'll talk about why I think it's extremely important that we start to believe in masculinity again and denounce toxic masculinity. First, I want to talk about the difference between toxic masculinity and healthy masculinity. Toxic masculinity, as defined from Google, is defined as the cultural pressures that causes men to behave in dominant, homophobic, sexist, and aggressive manners. And I think that is a perfect definition of what toxic masculinity is. But I think there's a big difference between toxic and healthy masculinity. Healthy masculinity, on the other side, is what makes a man motivated, hardworking, driven, and many other things that are needed to be successful in today's society. And it has nothing to do with being aggressive or competitive or anything. Although those things can be good, rarely it has to be in moderation. And healthy masculinity has nothing to do with those. In an article from elephantjournal.com, they stated that when healthy masculinity emerges in a man, it comes from his true, authentic self. And I think it's extremely important to be able to differentiate toxic and healthy masculinity. Because toxic masculinity is such a loose term, and people just use toxic masculinity as a way to describe anything a man might do that offends them. This is not good for men because it's hard to be able to differentiate what to do and what not to do as a man. And this turns me to my second point, is the one reason I think masculinity is extremely important. There are so many good things that come from a healthy amount of masculinity, but the most important one I think it is to be a family man. And I think every man in the world strives to be a father. And having masculine attributes drives him to be an extremely good father. It motivates him to supply for his family, work a hard job, give a roof over the head, give food to his family. And he does this all because he's masculine and he does it for his family. He doesn't complain. He does it for the family. And that's just one of the biggest things. Without that masculine motivation for a man to be a good family man, he wouldn't do those things. This quote from an article on StephanJulie.com sums up my point perfectly. Controlled masculinity is not toxic, aggressive, or overly sexual. On the contrary, it's a man who has constant pursuit of things far greater than himself, constantly improving himself and those around him. A true high-value man who is solving problems and creating things for the benefit of himself and others. And that quote is just perfect. It's a man wanting to be something bigger than himself. And finally, I want to talk about why I think it's desperate for our society to support masculinity and denounce toxic masculinity. The main reason I think it's important is because the younger generations of boys don't know what the difference is between toxic masculinity and healthy masculinity. These young boys, in some instances, are taught toxic masculinity and taught that it's a good thing. It's a good thing to put women below you and not treat them the same way as men, or treat someone that may be a different skin color differently because they just have a different skin color. They need to be taught healthy masculinity. They need to be taught to be hardworking, have good work ethic, want to get stuff done, and not do that in an overly competitive way that wants to shun other men or other people in general. And I think it's also important because a world without masculinity is not the place that we want to live in. There's so many things that happen because of hardworking men that aren't overly toxic and just want to get stuff done. They just want to be a contributing member to society. And one of my favorite quotes from Jordan Peterson, he stated, "Masculinity isn't toxic, the absence of it is. Weak men are abusive and spiteful. Strong masculine men are protective and loving." And I just think that's a perfect quote for what we need nowadays. So, at the end of the day, I think the only way for society to grow is to talk about these tough topics and have these discussions. A lot of people might not agree with me. They might think feminism is more important than masculine. But I think that a man should have feminine traits and a woman should have masculine traits. That just brings the best out of everybody. So yeah, I hope this speech helped you understand the differences between toxic masculinity and healthy masculinity. I hope that the reason that being a family man is extremely important, and without masculinity, it wouldn't happen. And why I think it was important. It's important for our society to really support masculinity and be able to differentiate toxic and healthy masculinity. So now I'll close with one of my favorite quotes. The indomitable human spirit will always surpass the cruel indifference of the universe.